Good afternoon, everyone. We are very excited to be here, Purpose Possible in the Atlanta Beltline. This is the information session for the businesses for the 2025-2026 Business Facade Partnership Grant, which is put together by the Atlanta Beltline. And Purpose Possible helps manage the grant. This is the second time that we're doing this, so we are super excited to share with you some of the things that we've learned along the way and tell you what the process is going to look like this year. So we are going to start with an agenda so everyone knows what to expect for today's conversation. We're going to have some welcome and introductions, and then Laura Lindman from the Atlanta Beltline is going to walk us through the program, what it's going to look like, what the timeline will look like as well. We've also invited the general contractor, so two representatives from Skanska, which is the group that we've been working with for this current round. And some of the things that they'll share are considerations for businesses to have if you choose to apply to this grant. And then we are going to invite some of the artists for this year's round as well. And they're going to share with us some of the things that they've learned about past projects, the projects that they're currently working on. And then we'll close the session today with a Q&A. I've added in this little square in the bottom right corner that applications for this cycle will open in 4 days, so June 20th, and will stay open until July 28th. And all of this information you will receive. It's going to be in Submittable, but I just wanted to highlight those dates in the corner right there. All right, so let's start with some introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Natalia Garzón Martinez, and I work with Purpose Possible. I am a consultant for the organizational strategy team. This is the second time that I've been working on this grant, so I'm super excited. And I'm also here with my colleague, Taryn, who I will let introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Taryn Janelle. I have been with Purpose Possible for about 5 years, and this is again the second time that Purpose Possible has facilitated this process. So we're excited to do it again.
Amazing. And then I've added in the corner some other Purpose Possible team members that you might hear from or hear about in emails and things like that. Laura Moody, Anna Reese, and Audrey Gamis. They're all other names you might hear. And then Laura, I will let you introduce yourself from the Atlanta Beltline.
Thanks so much. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm Laura Lindman. I am on the economic development team as a program manager, and it is my pleasure to help run this program alongside the Purpose Possible team. This is the fourth cycle that we have had, and the second one with Purpose Possible. And as we try to expand it, it has been very important for us to partner with Purpose Possible and a team like them to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And I'm thrilled that we are on to the second round with them. And that is what we're talking about today. All right. So most of you probably know about the Beltlines, but just in case you don't, this is one of the largest, most wide-ranging urban redevelopment projects in the United States. And essentially, it will be a 22-mile loop around the city of Atlanta once it's completed, with 33 miles of trails, and also working alongside housing partners to do affordable housing, economic development initiatives, community development, and other community enhancing initiatives. So like I said, this program is in its fourth cycle. The program started in 2019. My colleague, Kara Lively, designed the project. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. And this initiative is really here to support the beautification and enhancement of commercial spaces along the Beltline. What we do is we pair business owners with talented local artists in order to bring a beautiful facade to the front of their building. This is for just the outside, the exterior portions of buildings, and it's really there as an entryway for that business, and a way to include the community in and invite them into your space while also investing in your business and in the community at large. And the program does offer up to $50,000 in grant funding to help businesses grow through this facade grant program. The funding does go directly to artists that we work with, not to the business owner, but it is up to $50,000 in grants. And it is there to help contribute to the vibrancy of Atlanta's commercial corridors. And as Natalia already mentioned, the applications will open later this week. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit more about the types of projects that you might see. And we've got the folks from Skanska here, and we'll have a conversation with some of the current artists as well. But these program or projects are really there to enhance the curb appeal to attract more customers to the area, create a Beltline facing storefront that really speaks to the vibrancy of Atlanta, showcases the business's proximity to the Atlanta Beltline. And when we say proximity, we mean within the Beltline Planning Area, which is a half mile on either side of the corridor. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later as well. And then, of course, it's part of a larger building improvement or business expansion project, if you so wish. So that means if you want to pair this with an interior design project as well, you may do that. It is not a requirement, but we can certainly make that work. So as we mentioned, the business eligibility for this is that you must be located within the Atlanta Beltline Planning Area. We have a link to the business address locator, and you can type your address in to decide to see whether or not you fall within our BPA, which is the Beltline Planning Area. We might say Beltline Planning Area or BPA several times throughout this presentation, so I just wanted to call that out. So as I mentioned, this is your business eligibility. These are the steps that you can go through. When you put your address into the locator, you'll click enter, and a box will pop up that says that your address falls within the Beltline Planning Area. If it does not, it will also explicitly say that. If you have any trouble with the tool or if you need help with verification, please feel free to reach out to us on our business email, which is listed here as business@atlbeltline.org. And please do put in the subject facade grant BPA confirmation so that we can make sure to pay special attention to it. Next slide. So the application timeline and process has been well established by the Purpose Possible team, and we're thankful for those clear guidelines, and we're excited to be kicking this off on June 20th. The application process will run through July 28th, and you will have into the 11th hour to get that in, but we hope that you do not wait until the 11th hour. The application will be available on Submittable, and all communications throughout the process will be handled through that Submittable platform. We do plan to have interviews with finalists August 18th through August 29th. And then we plan to notify applicants whether or not they've been accepted into the program by September 5th. The next part of this is the artist proposals. And what we'll be doing is pairing several artists with each of the businesses to provide several options for business owners to take a look at the different artists that they've been paired with and the proposals that they might provide. Those businesses that are selected will review the artist RFPs and submit their top choices during the period of September 13th through September 22nd. And then our artist match will be completed by October 24th. And we give about a month to help with finalizing those proposals and really drilling it down into some of those details that we really need to look into. Some of these projects may be murals and a little easier to talk through, but some of them may be more intricate and take a little bit longer to design. And so we want to make sure that we're very clear about expectations with the artist and vice versa, and that's what that period is for. And then finally, we hope for project build out to be completed by May 1st. This allows us to get past some of those cooler months and to really delve into the project planning as well as any permitting that is needed. And that is a great segue into introducing you to the next speaker. So Natalia, I'll let you take it back over.
Thank you. Yeah, so our next section is to hear the perspective from the general contractor, as we mentioned, Skanska. We have Jason Solomon and Jimmy Mitchell, and they're going to walk us through some of the things that you can all consider as you are thinking about applying for this grant.
Hello, everybody. Jimmy Mitchell here, and I'll start us off and then hand it over to Jason here in a few moments. So for the design, working with these artists has been a good experience. For many years, I've worked in the building industry, and get to see communities transform their different buildings, but the different murals and sculpture type projects that we've seen this past year are really impressive and can really transform the facade. One thing, from the contractor perspective, it's important that the number of iterations between the design effort and kind of getting to where you want to be is minimized. We, I can see it sometimes. You can do great work through one or two or three iterations, and then at times it can be burdensome if you kind of have a bad not a great idea of where you want to go, and then you end up taking 6 or 7 iterations. So Jason and I, we help with that to try to keep things on track and minimize the number of times that it's redone. From a budget standpoint, the budget is stated and it can't be exceeded. And so we have great experience on the team to be able to understand what the cost of materials are and the impacts of escalation and other things like, maybe for this round tariffs. And of course, big things like power and water if they happen to be needed. So we work with the team to make sure that we have the appropriate contingencies and plans in place for keeping it within the budget and on schedule. From a materials standpoint, these things can be unique. Quite a lot of the projects in the past have been murals, but there's also been some sculpture. I'm kind of personally, I get really excited about those sculpture type installations. And I have a background with, I work for Skanska, but also I'm on the board at Life Cycle, which is a reuse nonprofit in town. And I always like the idea of doing reuse materials. So if anybody has interest in that, we can help with those types of ideas. And here I'm going to transfer it over to Jason to continue on with material thinking.
Thank you. So materials, as Jimmy was saying, so one of the things that we like the business owners to think about is materials that are going to be maintainable. So if we're going to do murals, or we have some really great projects this last year that have some really nice architectural elements, but something that's easy for the business owner to maintain and to maintain the beautiful nature and the serviceability of the design. So that's something to think about. The other thing is timeline. So like, how long would this project take to install on your business? So like a mural, we're seeing, within a few weeks. Something more structural, may take a few months, but you do want to think about that when you're going through the process, how it, is going to beautify the exterior building, but also how long will it take to install? And then will it affect business operations at all? And the reason I say that is, so some of the things are going to require, like if we have to close sidewalks, or if we have to, put in some safety precautions when we're doing the installation of the project, we want to take that into consideration. And that's something that Jimmy and I do with the artists and the business owner to make sure that we don't have any business interruptions. Another thing is permitting. So a lot of the projects, or a handful of the projects, if they require any structural elements that are being installed or applied to the building, that will need to go through the city of Atlanta building permitting and planning review, as well as the Urban Design Commission, and possibly, depending on the area that the business is located, the Historic Preservation Association that governs that area. So we did a project and we're working in Inman Park. So they're going to want to look at the plans, they're going to want to look at the design, and they're going to have a sign off. It's been a really great experience working with all three of the departments within the city, but we just need to allow time for that. So one of the things that we try and avoid is, there's some in all of the planning and zoning areas, there's limitations on signage, and there's limitations on like how tall something can be or how it's applied to a building. So we're going to work with those artists as well as the business owners to make sure that we don't have any of those pitfalls, and that everything that we're doing can be done within the timeline, within the budget, and meet the city requirements.
Amazing. Thank you. Awesome. So now that we've heard from Atlanta Beltline, from Skanska, we also wanted to share with you some tips about lessons that we've learned about how businesses can best collaborate with artists. And this is kind of the segue before we hear from some of the artists that are working with us for this first round. So I'll just quickly go over some of these. First, communication. Really being clear and honest from the beginning of the process about the best times and ways for the artist to reach you, really having this conversation about how you want to communicate, and also, of course, responding to communications promptly. Also knowing that there are limited revisions allowed throughout the process. The businesses will be limited to how many revisions they get. So you are, as a business, expected to give all the feedback that you want to give every time that we have one of these conversations, whether Skanska is present or whether it's just in the earlier stages with the Purpose Possible team. The third one is just trust the professionals, trust the Skanska team, Jimmy and Jason. They're here to help you. They're here to be, kind of that guiding light and voice of what might come up, how we can best make sure that your project can happen the way it needs to happen. So making sure that you come to these meetings with Skanska prepared, and to the artist, and that you know what you want to ask and that you're upfront about it is important. Checking submittable and email. We will keep saying that all the time, but we are here to help you, but you are also here to help us help you. And so making sure that you're meeting the deadlines, that you are checking submittable often. Submittable will send you a notification via email when someone sends you a message. So just making sure that you're checking that periodically during the process is a good way for the project to run smoothly for us as well. Skanska team just spoke about permitting. And then finally, gathering your assets. If you have any existing assets, whether that's branding colors or inspiration or anything that you would like for the artist to incorporate in this design, or that, for them to have in mind, please have those ready and please share those. The goal is that we can really, create a partnership between the business on the artist, to make something wonderful that is exciting for you and for the artist that you're working with. Here are some photos from this past round. Like I said, they include a variety of things, so murals, signage, installations, and the idea is to be flexible and open-minded as you put together these projects. And then this is the segue into introducing some of the artists that we're working with this year. They are going to tell us a little bit about what they do. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. I believe Sway is here already.
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. How's everybody doing? I'm Sway Jones. I was one of the artists for the Facade grant this year. I had a really great experience doing the murals this year. I had great communication with the business owners, which really helped the process. Everybody on the team, as far as the Beltline and Purpose Possible and Skanska, were very helpful to help the process be, lucky for me, very seamless. I also have a lot of experience as a mural artist, so I think that played into it as well. So like a lot of things that I would have had to figure out that were outside of my realm were figured out from you guys, and I really appreciated that. We, for the most part, were on schedule because we didn't have the rain that we have right now. But yeah, everything turned out really great. Definitely, if anyone has any questions as far as like the process or anything from an artist standpoint, for sure I can help.
I'm going to pick your brain a little bit
Pick
now.
my brain. Tell me what's up.
Because I think, what's been so exciting for us in this process is to also, get to work with different artists and just the way that they work and the way that they envision things. So I'd love to hear first a little bit about from your perspective, what makes a successful artist in business collaboration, thinking about this process that you're in for this specific grant.
Well, I have a lot of professional experience, I think, and that's not a shot at anyone, but I do think for an artist to have a successful relationship, you do have to move in that way, versus having a huge attachment to your specific art. um it is a collaboration, so like having the flexibility to create something that's from you, but also hear feedback from the business and be able to take that and implement it to ultimately get a outcome that makes everybody happy.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And then what is something that you tell me a little bit about your process when you're collaborating directly with a business owner that maybe hasn't worked with an artist before? Like, because you have this experience, how do you think that would work for you as you think about that process?
Absolutely. Pulling the inspiration is extremely important. I know working with a lot of clients in the past, they want to kind of see what you come up with first, and that's not always the best way. A lot of times, if you have everyone has something that they like, it could be five totally different things. But if you give me five different things that you like in a mural or a piece, I'm able to take those things and say, okay, this one has a lot of black. So do you like the contrast in that? This one is a lot of portraits. Do you like the detail in that? So we can take those things from what you like and create and pull from those, and try to figure out what elements do you actually like about things, and that helps us to pull together, okay, are you looking for portraits? Are you looking for, if it's a portrait, what kind of portraits are you looking for? Are you looking for meaningful figures in the community? Are you looking for random faces that show expressions that express what you wanna see? So I think it's a lot of things that we can pull from, but I think it's very important for the businesses to do their research ahead of time and bring something that we can pull from, because it takes a lot longer, and ultimately it's harder to reach something that you like if you don't know
Right.
what you like. So I think it's very important that they do their research ahead of time.
I love that. Thank you so much. I know David just joined us, so
Absolutely. How you
I'm
doing, David?
I'm gonna loop him into the conversation too. But David, if you
Absolutely.
could introduce yourself, and we're excited that you're here as well.
Hey, I'm David Moore. Um, I kind of I mean, I'm one of the artists of this year's cohort. And the approach that I bring is sort of more built and functional artworks, starting from my experience working with other artists like Amy Landisberg and Volkan Alkanoglu when they were based in Atlanta, and also from my work with the Pillar Foundation and now Reference Studio, which is my own practice.
Amazing. I want to start asking you this question because it was so fascinating for us to work with you because of that. But could you tell us what types of artistic interventions are possible on a facade? Because you're doing some interesting projects for this round. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, and how that's felt for you as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's I hate to be this guy, but it depends on your definition of the facade. Um, because working on two projects this year, one of them is very facade. It's applied to the face of the building, and what it is it's essentially thickening the skin of the building to add function to it, adding planter, trellis, a grade transition as the functional elements, and using bent wood to tie in with both the materials inside the business and as part of their signage and branding outdoors. And the other project is a lot less literal, because of the amount of open space that they have. The idea of facade is sort of the ground is even part of the facade of that project, utilizing asphalt art painting and eventually building up a trellis wall as part of their site work. And you can think about all kinds of things. You can think about lighting interventions, and maybe even murals are one that is used too. And how do you interface with different elements of the building? Like, how do you interface with a door? How do you interface with a window? How do you expand the function of these? How do you expand the aesthetics of them? It's just kind of
Thank you. No,
big,
that's
broad question.
yeah, no, it's important, and it's been exciting for us to have such a great scope of work, and artists that work very differently and that have different approaches to a project like this. I'd love to hear from both you, David, and Sway as well, like what what was helpful for you in this process to understand the story or the audience or the goals for the business? Like, what are some of those things that um, were exciting for you as you were trying to think, like you just said, David, like, what is the facade? How can I interact with this space? Maybe it can inspire the businesses that watch this recording as well.
Well, I can say doing two projects, I had two very different experiences. With Harbor Coffee, they are a coffee shop and cafe, and they had compiled a whole Pinterest page of things they were interested in that weren't just the functional things. They have a very defined story, and the way they like to tell it as like that represents their brand, with harbor being both a maritime reference due to the history of one of the owners, and also being like harboring something that creates shelter and comfort, which fed very much into this sort of soft intervention, bringing plants and plant matter into it, as well as their story. With Fred Martin, we kind of stopped and started for a little bit. They had an intention for basically one of the owners, or at least managing partners, also does art objects and wanted a place to sell them. And that ended up kind of getting rearranged due to zoning concerns. But I think what really started to inform that was looking at their craftsmanship and the craftsmanship that I could bring to it, and finding a way to meld those in a meaningful way so that they interface and create something greater than the sum of its parts.
Amazing. And Sway, I would love for you to also share a little bit about your project and what it looks like. And I know you're adding a 3D concept to a mural that you're working on. So I would love to just hear a little bit more about just expanding the possibilities for the businesses that hear this, because I mean, you two are artists that have definitely done that for these businesses. So if you could share that with us as well.
Absolutely. This first go around, we did just a flat surface mural. Moving forward, if I get the opportunity again, I would love to incorporate some 3D elements as far as pulling some things off of the wall. I don't know if you guys have any images of my stuff, but I do really vibrant, shapely backgrounds with very detailed center parts. So taking some of those elements and pulling them off of the wall, whether that be creating structural things like maybe with foam or different elements. It's a ton of different ways to take something and make it 3D. You can start with wood and build up, but really, really excited to to be able to propose those things moving forward. Because I have a separate business. My mural business and design business is Sway Art. I have a separate business where we build props. And I have a partner in that business. So we do a lot of like structural things, like really cool, like David said, like wood bendy types of things that we really get in there and really expand our minds as like how far can we really go, in doing things. So I would really like to fuse those together to not only come up with even more amazing murals and artistic pieces, but to also expand myself as an artist. Because a lot of times when people see that you do one thing, they want to kind of keep you there. So it's really cool to be able to expand within something and offer more, and get someone who's interested in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then could you talk a little bit about what was helpful for you to hear about when you were designing the project for the business?
Yes, it was again the business that I worked with the first go around. They didn't have a lot of concrete images, but they did have a really good idea of what was already in the neighborhood, and they wanted to blend with the neighborhood but stand out from the neighborhood. And I could really understand that. I was also really familiar with the neighborhood. But the neighborhood has a lot. It's a historic neighborhood, and it also has a lot of murals there. But they wanted the mural to really stand out and be a marketing piece, which for me, that speaks a lot. Like if you wanted to jump off the wall, we can make that happen. So I think, the business being able to express their end goal was really, really helpful. Like, hey, we want this to represent Atlanta. We want people to be able to see it from afar and stop and take pictures and know that this is a stop. And so that was really helpful for me, because at that point I can take those elements and turn them 20 different ways.
Amazing. I think this is a perfect segue into talking a little bit about and hearing from both of you, David and Sway, about, what is something that businesses can consider as they're working with artists that have very different practices, right? That practice in different ways, that think in different ways. I know usually when we hear a facade, we think mural, we think this is how a mural is supposed to look like. So anything that you would want to share with businesses that are interested in how do you approach artists that work in different ways, in different fields? Like what is helpful for them to be open-minded and to really make this project exciting for both parties?
I think really paying attention to the artist's previous works. Really paying attention, and if you like things about their work, then that's a segue to actually go in and see like what are they able to do. But I think really liking the artist's work at first is a really big part, because aside from this, I get a lot of clients who want things that you've never seen. Like I have a very I've done art my entire life, and I know how to do everything. So I can paint just about anything, but my style is very stylistic. So I think that would be the first thing. Like you want to see, am I the person to fit the style that you're looking for? Or other artists. That would be my advice. What about you, David?
I think a lot of my approach to art and design is basically that all of this stuff is potentially an expansion on something functional. Like a mural is sort of like a sign that's given space and time to breathe and become something more. I think when you're working with people with a more expansive portfolio, or broad portfolio, um, almost thinking about it as something that you might need anyway, but given the time and space to become more than just the thing that fits into your typical operating budget. Like
Mhm.
maybe a table at your restaurant or something that's for outdoor seating. That's something you never could have imagined before. Something kind of like that. How could a window become something new that you never expected?
Right.
Like that.
I love these
Yeah.
philosophical questions, David. I think they're very helpful. Um, tell me a little bit about those early visioning stages, right? When you started working with the business, you have the proposal, then you start figuring out how is this going to look like? What is helpful in those early visioning stages? And if you could share, so one, what is helpful during those visioning stages? And two, um, how what is helpful in communicating those shifts that you want for the proposal, right? Like when you're working with the business.
Shifts that we want as far as design.
Yes, like how were those early visioning stages and what were those tips? Like how did the business communicate those shifts? How were you moving things around to make sure that the proposal, the final product was what everyone wanted?
Um, yeah, for me, I'm really I give businesses a lot of advice as far as like clutteredness. I think a lot of times we have a lot of ideas, like having that, like I said initially, doing your research and having an idea of things you like. A lot of times that can become really overwhelming, and you can be like, "Well, I want all of that in one, thing," and that can become really overwhelming, not only for the business because um they want to see all of these elements, but it also becomes overwhelming for the artist because taking 10 different elements and putting it in, one piece can be a very interesting process. So I think back to what you guys said about trusting the professionals, like definitely, I think if the goal is to get the idea out
Mm-hmm.
and not the specifics always. Because I always relate it to like a gas station. Everyone's seen those gas stations that have the spray paint on them, and it's like it's so crazy that you're like, I'm just gonna go to the QT. Because it's too much. Like it's just too much. It's like they got the potato chips on there, and they got, we live in Atlanta. Everyone's seen these gas stations that have these random things on the outside of them, and they just don't look appealing. So I think that's the idea when you throw too many things in the pot. Like sometimes you can take the same idea and make it cleaner, more modern. You can take it and translate it visually in a better way. And I think that's where the businesses do have to lean on the professionals and say, hey, at the end goal, this is my goal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then lean on the professionals because you already like their work. You've
Yeah.
already given them what, the important parts are. You've given them this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So now you have to give them that flexibility as well to lean on them and allow them to create because that's what we do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my take. I'll let you
I
have it.
love that. David, I know you answered a little bit of these questions already, but do you have anything to add to that?
Um, I think as far as what Sway's saying of getting the business to clearly communicate the value of what they want out of it is a huge help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think as an artist, you also have to communicate the value of what you want out of it. Um, that's I guess, the leaning on the professionals part. Other than that, as far as just communicating concepts to get something out,
Mm-hmm.
um, whatever way you can get visual mock-ups as fast as possible is, is most people need to see it to know what it's going to be.
Absolutely.
We can talk philosophical questions all day, but they want to know what it's going to look like.
Right. That's
and
very,
how to not like lose yourself in that and spend way too many hours doing it.
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. And now, I mean, I feel like everything that you've shared, you've both shared today is it's really beautiful because it shows how this process is really, two people, the business and artists kind of walking alongside this path and having this end goal where both, the artist's goal of what value is going to be added to their own expertise and their own skill and how is the business going to have an added value to their business and what they do. So if you could share kind of to wrap this up, an example or, how it felt for you when you have finished one of these projects, um, what is it, yeah, like what does it feel like? How it transformed the space after you were done? How did it change the business presence? Any type of exterior project that you've done, what does that end goal look like, feel like for you as an artist?
You want to take it first, David?
um, I was trying to figure out how to say it politely. It's usually you want to keep the I've found you want to like keep the business out of the sausage making portion of the process, because if you're really involved in that, um, I've always needed like a couple weeks away to to come back and appreciate it, as uh as artists, business owners, we're
Hmm.
all going to see like the tiny little problems.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to take a step back from that and not pay attention to it for a little bit. It's usually a big catharsis.
I
I guess
think
the way I'd put it.
no, I think that's important. And honestly, I'm glad you brought it up because it's one of the other things that I mentioned today, right? Is really having there's so many touch points with the artist, both in terms of visioning, but also when the project is starting and the logistics of how that's going to look like. And I think understanding, as a business, understanding how does your artist work? How do they communicate? What do they want? What do they need? And making sure that you are aligned. And I'm sure you as artists also had to learn, how do I reach the business owner? What do they want to see the mock-up first, or do they want me to explain how it's going to look? Like it's a work of from both parties, and I think that's also what's wonderful about having this project. Sway, what do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I want to say two things. So, to your point about how your artist works and stuff, I think as the business owner, just a tip, I think it would be helpful to talk about that ahead of time because this wasn't my experience, but I've had other clients that has been my experience. Sometimes like the businesses will stand over you like really a lot. It's really really hard to work that way, and I know you guys are excited and you want to see the and like absolutely ask any questions, like communicate with your artist for sure, but micromanaging is a different ballpark. And I would just say again to lean on the professionals in that, because anyone who gets into this program or gets through, the acceptance portion of this program does have an expertise level. And again, this was not my experience in this program, so I just want to restate that. But I will just say in general, that's like a really hard type of business to work for as a creative, because we're creatives and we're used to kind of being in our own creative world in general. Like a lot of times if we're out there and there's a line crooked, I promise we see it. I promise you we see it. We don't need like a reassurance. They're like, are you going to straighten that up? Like, no, 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 no. Please don't do that. And so I would say that, but yeah, just talking about in the beginning with your artist, like how do you best work? Is it okay? Like if I check in every now and then, or is it like, would you rather me say something if I see it ahead of time? Like really communicating with your artist to figure out what's best for their style of work. Because if these projects last for weeks and like you guys said, sometimes months, you want the energy to be there. You want the artist to remain excited about the process and not be, kind of stressed out. So I did want to make that point because you said that. And I think that's important for business owners to know, because I know coming from a space of just being a business owner, you're not really thinking about how the artist feels. So you're like, well, they're here to get it done. Like, yeah, but you got to let us get it done. All right. So I'll say that. And then I'll move to how I feel when everything is done. To me, it is a huge relief. I agree with David. It does take a time. It does take some time. Like, it took a while before I went back and took pictures of it and stuff, because it was just, you pour everything into it, and honestly, you'll always find something. As the artist, you'll always find something. You're like, I should have did blue instead of white right there. I should have touched that up or whatever. But I agree with him. You have to give it a little time. But my specific project with this facade, it is amazing what it did to that block. It's a corner piece. We did one side of the building. We did the front and the side of the building, so it affects the actual building and the apartment complex that's next to it, and it has lit up the entire street. And definitely has become a destination for photos and stuff. So yeah, I think taking that the white surface, it was just a white building, and taking that to the point where everybody's like, well, what's in there? And it's just a real estate office, like they're like, well, what? I want to go in there and do something. Like, I'm like, yeah, you go rent a space, but they're a real estate company, and so like, just to bring that much excitement to what otherwise would have been just the typical boring office, shows what this program can do for any business surface. So yeah, I had I'm very proud of the piece that we created. I think it's a beautiful combination of vibrancy and detail, and it does exactly what the business wanted, which is to communicate, come over here.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm very proud, very excited, and yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you. And yes, we'll definitely make sure to have the place so people can go check it out if they want to and see it.
Yes.
And I know we're excited to see yours, David, when they're finished as well.
Yeah.
I I wanted to, yes, thank you both for being here. This is wonderful that we get to hear from two artists that are doing very different projects and that have very different approaches to the process. I know that I'm speaking for Purpose Possible, is that it's been wonderful working with you two and just being part of this process with you two. So thank you so much for joining us and for having your insights and sharing all of that. I'm going to stop sharing real quick and go back to our chat. I know Laura Linman, you wanted to add something, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. First of all, thank you, David and Sway, for being here. I think that's really important conversation to have, and just hearing, your side of things, because that's something that we don't often get to hear. Um, there are a couple of things that just really stood out to me, and one is the storytelling, right, portion of things. Um, that Sway, you pulled out that piece about how it transformed a block. Like, that's part of the story, right? And so business owners, as you are putting in your application, one of the things that we want to hear is your story and your importance to the community, and what you want to bring to the community, and what you find important, and how this would be transformative for you as a business and for the area that you're in. So that's part of what I wanted to just make sure that we were talking about. Um, Also, I love the part about expanding artists' skill sets and capabilities, right? And having an opportunity. So, part of this program is to really allow for emerging artists to be able to get into some areas that they might not have done before. David and Sway have been doing this for a long time, and many of our artists have too, but some of them really want to expand their skill sets, and they have the basis there, but maybe they just need a little extra support to be able to expand into something else. And that's why Jimmy and his team and Jason's team from Skanska is really important, to help someone with that background, with the permitting, or facilitating conversations with other partners. So artists may end up bringing in other partners to either fabricate for them or bring in another skill set to help them learn too. So keep that in mind as you're working with these artists. We want to really see this as an opportunity to grow for everyone. I want to talk a little bit about some of the details that y'all need to know, and these will all be very well spelled out in the application process. But the first thing I really want to emphasize is if you are not the property owner of your business, go ahead and start having those conversations with your property owner now. Get a feel for whether or not they'll even allow you to do this, because we don't want to get down the line, have you accepted, and then your property owner does not sign off on it. We have to have a signature from your property owner to be able to move forward. And if they say that we can't paint on this building or we can't do certain things to this building, that's going to severely limit what we're allowed to do. Be aware of if you're in a historical area. That doesn't mean that we can't work with you. David has been working in historic areas right now. It just means that the process is a little bit longer, maybe, or got a couple extra steps, right? David is smiling because he knows what this looks like. And just know that our team is here to help we work through that. It is not a barrier. It is just something that we need to know up front if we can. You also need to know that we have a 5% match for this program. And that is so that we have some contingency funds on the back if something happens, and to make sure that you guys have buy-in and the financial resources to be able to continue this. We really want to see businesses stay in business for at least 3 to 5 years after, and hopefully much longer. But our intent is for these pieces to be available for public viewing for 3 to 5 years, and our goal is 5 years. So really making sure that you have the financial ability to put that 5% in is crucial to making sure that you're ready for this grant. We'll also provide information on some of those background requirements, like your business license from the city of Atlanta. You've got to be in good financial standing. And having a business license means that you have to be a for-profit business. Right now, we don't have the ability to do any projects that are for nonprofits at this time. This is solely for businesses that are for-profit. I'm sure y'all have plenty of other questions, and we will hopefully have really good answers on the website, but just in case, we do want to leave a couple of minutes to answer some of those questions this time.
Yes, we have one question, Laura. Are e-commerce businesses eligible for this grant?
Yes, they are, as long as they have a physical property within the Beltline Planning Area, and as long as it's aiming for beautification and enhancement of that community. So I would say yes.
Awesome. Those are all the questions we have, actually. Maybe we said too much today that there are no questions. So hopefully that wasn't super overwhelming. But yeah, Skanska folks, do you want to add anything to what was said, the conversation? Are you good? Just want to make sure we cover all our bases.
We're good. Everything's fine.
Thank you.
I
It
did
is,
just see
you're right.
it.
It's exciting to hear from Sway and David and their enthusiasm.
I did just see a question come through. Can glass storefronts be included? Absolutely. And also, if this does not weigh into whether or not you're accepted, but if you want to do something and you know that it's going to push up against that $50,000 budget and you want to make it a bigger project, remember, you can always pair your own financing and capital into making it a bigger project, but they are capped at $50,000. Glass storefronts they're definitely eligible, and we can work with that. They just might be a little bit more expensive. Jimmy or Jason, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's the type of item that's $100 a square foot potentially, right? So that eats away at a $50,000 budget really quickly. So
yes, Andy, it's going to be available, and we're also going to include the chat for the Q&A if you want to drop in more questions. And then sometime in the next week, we'll make sure to send a one-pager with every answer to every question that comes up so that you are all ready to start your application when it opens on Submittable. You're welcome. All right. Well, I think this is it for today. Thanks. Taryn just dropped that Q&A link one last time for you to have it and save it. We'll be looking at it. Again, thank you to the Skanska team for being here and for giving us all your insights. To David and Sway, again, it's been wonderful working with you, and thank you for bringing your perspective. Of course, thank you to the Atlanta Beltline and Laura Linman. And to Taryn, my colleague. Yay! Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.